Hello, Outposters. Well, I'm having all kinds of problems with poor George here because I cannot get his Skype up, and it won't let me hit the properties for some reason. It's not letting me put you up there, and I don't know why.
Can people still hear me?
Yes, they can. They can hear you just fine, but they can't see you.
That's maybe a
Um,
good thing.
you said that. I did not. So I am going to try to fix this up as best I can. But in the meantime, you could go ahead and do the opening. Now this is the hazards of trying to do a brand new what do you call it? A brand new laptop. And yes, I am missing a thing here, so I'm going to have to do something a little different. And that's okay. We'll
Okay, you crack on with that and focus on that. I will say hello to everybody at least, and welcome to the Outpost Frequencies, brought to you by thelastmovieoutpost.com for all your movie news, reviews, and everything cool about film. We're coming to the end of October. Can you believe it?
I cannot.
I know. It's going to be next year soon. Hopefully, 2022 will be ever so slightly better than 2021 and 2020 and every other year that my life has sucked. No, it's not been that bad.
I
But
was going to say, has it been that bad? No.
yeah, to be honest, I've actually enjoyed 2021. I know, obviously, people have been hit with different things and everything else, but I found it all right. But we are coming to the end of the month, which means next week we will be talking purely about horror films next week on Halloween. We will both be in fancy dress. I will be going as a off-duty Superman, which you can't even see because my video's still not working, but I'm wearing my Superman t-shirt. But yeah, so we'll have to do a little bit of fancy dress next week to keep everybody going. And we're going to be discussing the 31 Days of Horror, which has been interesting. There's been some movies up there that I have never heard of, and I've been quite enjoying that 31 Days of Horror. It's been very good. But anyway, that is for next week. This week, first of all, we are going to be talking about the results that just come in, which I've only just read myself, of who the last movie Outposters voted to be the next James Bond. If you go to the website, it's on the main page at the moment. If not, you might have to do a quick search for it. But there were quite a few good names that we discussed last week, or the week before, I think it was. With Dom was here. Oh, yeah, speaking of which, sorry, it's me, not George Lucas and Drunken Yoda. Forgot to introduce the two of us. Dom, unfortunately, couldn't make it today, but hopefully he'll be back next week. But yeah, we were discussing James Bonds, and some names came up like Henry Cavill and Cillian Murphy, Richard Madden, Dev Patel, Tom Hiddleston, John Boyega. And it's been interesting. We had 106 votes altogether, which is not bad. Top came out was Henry Cavill. That is who everybody would like to see as the next James Bond. I think I voted for him as well. He certainly fits the profile with that strong jaw of his, and he is proper English as opposed to an Australian trying to do an English accent and that kind of thing.
Understood.
What did you make of him?
I liked him quite a bit. I think he would be a great Bond. I think he's. I don't know. I mean, I think he would do a fantastic job with. I mean, he sounds very British. He sounds very posh. What I think that he's proven is that he can be edgy. He can
Hmm.
be dangerous, and I think between The Witcher and I guess maybe Mission Impossible.
That whole fight sequence in Mission Impossible, the last one in the toilet, was brutal.
It was.
It was really, really well done.
Okay, so I've done a screen capture here instead of a Windows capture. With Skype, you're supposed to be able to do a specific capture um, of the actual Skype window. Well, I guess I forgot to install something when I reinstalled this, and I did all my testing. I should have done it with you. So, but you are now showing to the world again,
Hooray!
and I apologize. I know, but I do have this brand new laptop. I don't know if you all can see it. Let me go to just me here. I got this nice MSI laptop with a 3060 card in it and all the fixins, and it should handle our streaming, because I know a lot of you were complaining that, hey, Mark or Yoda, screw it, dox me. What do I give a fuck?
Hey, you in the bushes.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah. I got this nice white MSI. You guys were complaining that when I would go and I would show a window, like a Chrome window or something like that, my audio would get all crackly. And so I'm hoping that this little bit of extra power here, excuse me, will help us be able to have a little bit cleaner streams from now on. So those of you that are on right now, I would appreciate some feedback if you're listening. And after this stream, George will, if you're not hugely busy, I might hit you up just to help me out, making sure that I've got these pieces in place, which I should have done.
No worries.
We're well prepared, obviously.
It's funny because like I say, because I bought a new laptop as well last week, and I've been going through the whole setup system as well, and I've completely forgotten things and sort of like, where is that? Ah, yes, I need to download it and install it. That's where it is.
It's a nightmare, isn't it? It's a nightmare.
It's kind of a nightmare, but at the same time, I kind of quite like it, getting everything all just set back up and getting all the preferences done. But I'm nerdy like that, so.
No, I hear you. I hear you.
Right, so back to Henry Cavill. Like I say, he came out as our number one slot. Now, the only problem is I think I said the other day, I think it's Matthew Vaughn is now making a spy thriller series called Argyle, and I'm sure he's cast Henry Cavill in that. And I think, obviously, if Henry goes ahead with that, for him to go and do Bond is going to be tricky.
I would definitely say so, and I'm bringing it up here on the screen. So we got Henry Cavill here. I said that he's good because he appeared in the last Mission Impossible movie. You mentioned the fight, which was brutal. He was also in The Witcher, which he's borderline evil in The Witcher. I mean, he kind of straddles the line, but he has powers.
He's evil with morals.
Yeah, evil with morals. So I mean, he's got that edge. And then of course he played Superman when Superman decides to twist the necks off of his enemies. So there's that. So I don't know. I mean, I guess the extra question would be, what do you think the tone of the next James Bond franchise should be? Because I'm not really certain if it makes sense to, like, I like the Daniel Craig story, and we'll call it a self-contained story at this point. Okay. Yeah. I think Casino Royale may be the best James Bond, depending on what you're looking for. But I mean, just as a solid movie, I think it's tops. I don't think any of the other Daniel Craigs quite came up to that.
It kind of put Bond, I think actually it probably did what GoldenEye did for Pierce Brosnan. When they had that first launch with GoldenEye, it was fantastic and it was great. And then they relaunched it obviously with Daniel Craig, with what did you say? Which one was it?
Casino Royale.
Yeah, and brain fart. And so they completely relaunched it with that. And then again, that Casino Royale was fantastic, but then they have kind of dipped a bit as they've gone. I've still not seen that last one yet. But again, if they're going to reboot it with somebody new, whoever it turns out to be, it depends on how they're going to do it. And I wonder if they're actually going to change things depending on the actor that they get in.
Well, that is the question, isn't it? I mean, we don't know whether or not they're going to, because like, okay, you've got the tone of the Craigs and the early Connerys, and maybe the Timothy Dalton a little bit. And then you've got the complete parody of Roger Moore and even some of the late Connerys. And then you got this weird in between where it's maybe trying to be serious, but it keeps going into parody. And that would be all the Pierce Brosnan ones. And I honestly, I think the GoldenEye was decent, but I think all the Pierce Brosnan ones are the worst because they don't really commit to being parody or
Yeah.
they're right in the middle of the road.
It's a shame because I thought Brosnan was great. He as James Bond was fitted really well, but then the action sequences were great, but then the comedy, because they brought in John Cleese as well, and obviously John Cleese I know you've heard of him, but I mean he's been a
Of
mainstay of
course.
comedy in the UK. Every young male is given a copy of Monty Python and told to learn it off by heart at the age of 12, and so of course obviously
Which
he
we
is.
happily do.
But because he is such a comic actor, it obviously added quite a lot of comedy to those elements. And again, it kind of bordered on those camp Roger Moore ones.
I agree, and I don't know what is the tone they're going for in the next one. Personally, I would like to see them stay in the Daniel Craig vein, but turn up the tone like by 2 notches, not
Mhm, yeah,
100 notches, 2 or 3 notches, just to lighten it up just a little bit.
yeah,
I think they almost had it in No Time to Die. He was actually punning and making quips, and they had a little bit of the ridiculousness, but it wasn't too far. The biggest problem with No Time to Die is the plot is a little nonsensical.
right,
But it's not bad. It's better than Spectre, and it's better than Quantum of Solace. You really got this going on with these, right?
yeah.
So
I think they
every
say
other
that.
one.
That's what I was gonna
It's like the
say. Yeah,
Star Trek movies. So
yeah.
they decide to use that template, make every other one suck. Um, so the
I don't think they decided that, but yeah.
that was the whole plan. It's really weird. They so I guess what kind of tone? I guess I would ask you, Outposters, and maybe we should make that our next poll. What kind of tone would you like to see in James Bond? And do you feel like they've gone the correct way or not? Um, with this with the Daniel Craig grim and gritty, should they stick with that? Should they make it even? Because I mean, to a certain extent, I kind of miss seeing James Bond pull a helicopter out of his briefcase.
Yeah. I think as I remember reading, I think it was up until sort of around Goldeneye that everything that appeared in Bond previously was possible, or it must have been up to the Roger Moores, because I know no, he had a laser in his watch, and I'm sure somebody said that was actually a possible thing to do. But then obviously in the
it
in
is whether or not it
I,
can burn through shit. I don't know, but
but it got to one of the Broslins where he had the invisible car, and I think in Top Gear over here they did actually kind of make it, but it took 500 batteries just to run this thing. And so I mean technically it was possible, but obviously they just sort of pushed it just that little bit too far with it. But again, like I say, because it was funny because Casino Royale took most of the gadgetry and everything out. There was no Q or whoever it was John Cleese R. But
no, I think he was Q. Was he?
But they didn't introduce a new Q until was it
Quantum
Sky?
of Solace? I thought.
Oh yeah. So he sort of did come in a little bit late. So they sort of took the gadgetry out and just made it about Bond as a man. I thought it was interesting, really, at the end of Casino Royale, that Bond was in the nude and Mads Mikkelsen was whipping him. It was no high-tech laser or anything else. And
yeah, he's just hitting him in the balls 75 times.
yeah,
And then he has a kid in the next movie. I'm calling that's the most unbelievable bullshit I've seen so far. Those balls were mush.
Yeah, there's no. He must have had sperm on frozen or something or other. Maybe it's something that the MI5 do.
It's the life. You got to be prepared, man.
This
Freeze your sperm just in case your balls get run over by a steamroller.
Yeah, that's it's a perfectly. It's exactly what happened. It's a perfectly logical thing to prepare for.
Yeah, I mean, you got to think of everything, and they do.
And then weirdly enough, moving from Henry Cavill, I thought that Tom Hardy would have come in second, but he didn't, because second was Dan Stevens. Now, Dan Stevens, again, is sort of best known for The Guest. He is known for Downton Abbey, And he was also the knight, and I think it was the third of the. He was Lancelot in Night of the Museum, the third one.
Oh, okay. Maybe I
So
need
that's
to.
good.
I have no impressions or knowledge of the guy, and I haven't seen Downtown Abbey. It's on my to watch list along with about 75,000 other things.
Yeah.
But I would like to see Downton Abbey and try to understand what exactly. I mean, I saw like maybe the first two episodes. I was like, okay, this could be interesting, and I just haven't continued it.
I've
So
not seen any of them. It's not my cup of tea at all. Yeah, I've absolutely no interest in watching any of it. But I mean, I know people know Dan Stevens from that. He was also Beast in Beauty and the Beast in the live action version, but obviously that doesn't count because he was very CG'd in that.
yeah, he was wearing lycra and ping pong balls that entire thing.
Yeah,
So we really
exactly.
don't know how he was. So yeah, he's one of those actors that people seem to know except me because he happens to be in things that I just haven't watched or haven't, come across my radar.
Yeah.
Everybody has that, like everybody's talking
Oh
about
yeah.
this guy. I think Benedict Cumberbatch was one of those for a while until he kind of broke out. People always talk about that name. He's so awesome. It's like if you hadn't seen those Sherlock Holmes, you really didn't know shit about him.
Yeah.
Um,
He kind of popped up in a few bits and pieces, and it was kind of, oh yeah, the funny looking guy.
yeah,
No
yeah.
offense, Benedict, if you are listening. Um,
Yeah, he's
but
growing into it pretty good. He looks pretty good as Strange. I gotta admit,
yeah,
He's got a good look.
the only thing I would say about him with Strange is to me the American accent is too much. His American accent sounds like a British person trying to do an American accent.
I hear that a lot, and maybe I think it's just me. I don't. I mean, unless it's really egregious, like Kevin. God damn it! In Robin Hood,
Oh, Kevin Costner, he didn't
Kevin
even try.
Costner.
He didn't even try.
No, I mean when you have somebody like that doing it, and when it's that egregious, then I'll notice it. I don't think Strange's accent's all that bad, but
Oh,
maybe
okay.
I mean, I think that's more me than it is his good accent because I hear this all the time where people say that accent was so terrible, and I'm like, going, is it like I don't think Don Cheadle is that bad in Ocean's 11, and everybody tells me it's so terrible. So
Yeah, he's
I think I've got a deficiency there.
don't have any different accents. No, yeah, Don Cheadle was not good. I mean, that's just coming from a British person, but it was a bit. You could tell that he wasn't from London.
Yeah, I mean maybe that's true. I think the only time I got irritated with him is when he was coming up with English sayings that I know are not really English sayings. Like we're completely Barney Rubble, trouble. I'm like, no way that's an English phrase. I don't
No,
believe it.
that is wrong because a Barney is an argument. If you're having a Barney with somebody, it's an argument. It's
There-
I've never heard Barney Rubble trouble before.
No, first of all, it's an
Um,
American thing, the Flintstones, and
yeah,
second of all, I mean, I was
yeah.
just looking at it going, that is bullshit. You know what? If they had the balls at the end for him to just drop the accent, says, "Yeah, I've been fooling you the whole time," then I would have went, awesome. That would have made it. That would have been the best joke, the best trolling ever.
I always think that sometimes, like in Chinese restaurants, that they sort of they do the accent whilst they're serving you, and they go in the kitchen going, "Oh, I'm getting sick to death of doing that bloody accent for those people," in a perfectly British accent. But yeah, so like I say, that's our result. So obviously we'll now get hold of Barbara Broccoli and whoever else is producing, and let them
Yeah.
know our results.
Oh,
Our 100,
absolutely.
106 votes. I'm sure they'll be very interested.
Seems reasonable. I think we've spoken. Honestly, I mean 106 votes. It's not a great sample size, but it's not terrible.
No,
And if we get that many, I mean, he won it by like a pretty wide margin.
yeah,
So I think that if I would not be surprised to see if we've called this that he
yeah.
would be the next Bond because he seems like a natural, unless of course the PC bullshit takes over, right?
And they do one female Bond,
Yeah.
and then realise what a mistake it was. which we could have all sort of said, well, yep, if you just asked the public, they would have told you that.
We tried to warn you, but you
Yep.
wouldn't listen.
These female reboots don't work. It is a shame that I obviously got nothing wrong with female empowerment and female characters being the heroes or
I
heroines.
do. Get your asses back in the kitchen. Make me a sandwich. I'm getting tired of this. I haven't had a sandwich in 17 years, for Christ's sake. Make me a
Really?
fucking sandwich. What do you think? I know how to make it myself?
Well, no, I'm just saying. What
I'm
have
not
you
going
been
on
eating? 'Cause,
YouTube and getting the instructions. I'm not doing that.
But yeah, there's obviously nothing wrong with it. But when it is forced, it
Send
just
your
doesn't.
letters to @DrunkenYoda1 on Twitter.
Yeah, where they will be completely ignored.
Yep.
And so, in other of the news that we've had this week, quite a major plot detail may have been leaked about Indiana Jones 5. Now, already Indiana Jones is worrying. We've seen James Mangold have a huge meltdown on Twitter and slag somebody off for slating the film already. It looks like
that's right. Did he just have like a complete temper tantrum?
Yeah, basically
and
one person on Twitter on a YouTube channel like this. I don't think he watches this one, but sort of said, "Oh, the film's going to be rubbish," and he kind of sort of said, "Why don't you let the film be finished?" But in a much angrier, nastier voice. Which I do get that somebody's slagging his film off before they've even finished filming it. I do understand that, but you don't go onto Twitter and then publicly humiliate or try to publicly humiliate someone because the backlash was not good.
Well, I mean, it's just, to me, like Mangold did Wolverine, right? He did that one. So to me, it's just a lack of professionalism and emotional maturity.
Yeah.
And the idea that there's no emotional maturity in Hollywood is just shocking, I tell you. Shocked
Yeah.
to find that there's gambling in this establishment.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you'd think that these people would be a bit more emotionally ready to cope with things like Twitter, but no. But anyway, going back to Indy. So yes, and then the other bad news was Kathleen Kennedy is producing it, and I don't care what you say. I hate Kathleen Kennedy with a passion.
Now, producing it, I mean, look, her name will be on. Her name is on The Mandalorian.
As executive producer, though, isn't she?
Well, is she executive producer or
So,
producer?
I can't remember that now.
Sometimes they play around with that, so I'm just trying to understand. A lot of times she'll just get a producer credit because she's the CEO of the company.
Yeah,
it doesn't mean they're letting her do shit. The question is, how much involvement does she have? The credit to me is like meaningless at this point. It's really a silly credit. It's like you'll see all these producers until you get down to the last one before director. That's the one. That's the guy that means something. So if she's like the first producer listed, that's a here's a love letter. Get the fuck out of our way, Kathleen. If she's the last one, then I'm worried.
It's the reason why I'm worried is, and I've always said this, that the Disney Star Wars sequels were ruined because she just didn't have a plan. As the producer, she should have started at one and said, right, these are the new characters, this is the progression they make, and everything else. And none of that happened. She brought in Ruin Johnson and just completely ruined that middle sequence, and then brought JJ back in. And I know JJ is a good part responsible for the Rise of Skywalker, but as the producer, she is the one who should have overseen the whole thing and just not. And look, there was just no plan over the whole three of those movies. And I think if she is producing Indy 5, it could spell trouble.
Well, I do think that. Okay, so to tick off your points there, one, J.J. Abrams, I think, possibly had some sort of plan that got flushed down the toilet by Rian Johnson, and then he had to figure out how to fix it. So I kind of figure that Rise of Skywalker, I mean, Spielberg, Scorsese, nobody could have fixed that piece of shit. It was so, the whole story was so wrecked my Last Jedi.
Yeah.
I kind of hate to put all of that on JJ. I've got my problems with JJ. He's got issues, but
I'm the same. Like I say, that he takes a good chunk of the responsibility, but not necessarily all of it.
right. And I don't think it's fair to really crush him on this kind of stuff. But I will say that what I need to know is not that, yeah, if she has that kind of involvement that she had on Rise of Skywalker, then I've got concerns. Or on the sequel trilogy in general, then I've got huge concerns. If it's just a bone they threw at her to get her out of their way, I'm not as worried about it, because I think Mangold did a fine job with the Wolverine. So,
However, I have been watching a few videos. Now, this is all speculation. I will say that from this point in, it's all rumors and speculation. But apparently, Bob Iger is not happy. Head of Disney is not happy with her and wants her out. He has given her this Indiana Jones 5 to do as kind of like a last final farewell. And some people are thinking, with the news that we haven't even spoken about yet, is that to her, this is a kind of, right, I'm out. Bye, everyone. And because what the news is, we should actually get onto is, and if you hadn't read this, like I say, this is again just purely rumors.
Yeah, I guess we should circle around to the actual spoilers that we were talking about. Okay, go ahead.
Basically, they think from the set photos that have been seen that one of the main issues that may happen in Indiana Jones 5 is time travel. Now, from what I have heard on a few videos and so forth, again, purely rumors, only speculation, but with this time travel, a young Indy gets killed and is replaced by Phoebe Waller-Bridge. So much so that the way apparently it pans out is that when he gets killed, it means that Raiders of the Lost Ark, Temple of Doom, and the Last Crusade and the Crystal Kingdom never exist.
One of those four I would be okay with.
Yes. Oh, I wonder which one.
I wonder. God damn, that is something else. Is this a chance to make Phoebe Waller-Bridge the new Indy, or is this a chance to? I mean, yeah, I can see where you're getting that from. I mean, God.
It's quite a lot to take in, isn't it?
yeah. I heard time travel, and I put a little comment in the article. So time travel. I did that. The Nathan Fillion. Time travel.
Yeah.
Right. And that completely mystified, for those of you listening, that completely mystified look, like, this is a thing. This is the thing you're doing. I have no idea how to respond to this. It's not like there isn't a lot of bullshit in the Indiana Jones movies. First, it was religious bullshit, and then they threw in the saucermen from Mars and the Crystal Skull, and so I'm not completely against the idea of putting in some weird bullshit time travel in an Indiana Jones movie, but the thing is that the movies themselves are adventure serials. With the stinger, the little cherry on top at the end, is the supernatural stuff.
Yeah.
If you frame the whole thing in supernatural shit, it's not going to work.
It's funny because, I mean, a lot of people sort of said that the aliens thing in Crystal Skull didn't work. And it's kind of strange that in the first one, like you say, there is, religious overtones of the Holy Grail and these demons and everything else coming out of it at the end. But you think, yeah, I'll buy that. I'm okay with that. And then in Temple of Doom, there's, I want to call it voodoo, but, ripping people's hearts out and controlling them and mind control. Yeah, well, there was the voodoo doll, wasn't there? The little lad had the voodoo doll. And then in the third one, again, there's this religious overtones of breaking a seal, and they managed to build a bridge of fate and all this kind of thing. But again, you're sort of thinking, yeah, no, I'm on board with this. It's all in the realms of reality. But then Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, the end of it, I just thought, that's just stupid. Spaceship, really?
Well, yeah, you got to be able to. You got to say what you're going to buy and what you're not going to buy. My problem is that they frame too much like even Crystal Skull, there wasn't that much supernatural bullshit going on with it. Here and there, they probably put a little too much because they had the handwriting thing and they had the skull with them all the time that was magnetized for some reason.
And also
And
repels ants and
yeah, I mean, there was a little. They it was all over. In Raiders of the Lost Ark, there was none of that until they opened the thing at the end.
yeah, that's true.
And in Temple of Doom, it was subtle.
It was
Like
limited.
it was very limited. You drank this thing and you fell under their spell. The one kid's doing a voodoo doll, and then the stones at the end get hot, and you can reach in a guy's chest. But I mean, it was all very, it was spread out a little bit more through the movie, but none of it was very flashy. It was all very subtle.
Mm.
Uh, Last Crusade kind of took it back to, we'll just do some shit at the end.
Yeah.
Once they got into the big, thing in the cliff, the temple,
Yeah.
then that's when, okay, you drink the water, you heal. And the rest of it was just really clever architecture. There wasn't really anything magical about it. It was just,
Well, she did carry it across the seal, and then everything.
that was the only other thing. Yeah. With the Grail, but it was all centered around the Grail itself. Like the bridge
Yes.
itself was just, a magic eye painting or something.
Yeah.
But
Sure,
there was something really supernatural about it, other than it managed to hold up all those years. Although I guess that knight was there. Maybe he was there the whole 700 years. Sweep, 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 waiting for somebody to come.
Yeah.
So I'm not. If they started out with time travel, then the whole thing is framed in this mess, and I don't know.
That's kind of the problem, like you say, that if all of a sudden time travel is discovered, then he could go back and even he could go back to the beginning of Last Crusade and help his younger self, find that cross and save it and all that kind of stuff. And I think time travel is kind of one of those. It's like using the word quantum in a Marvel movie. That we need to somehow get over this. Quantum physics fixes it.
Yeah, I mean, time travel really puts itself into more of a science fiction realm.
Yeah.
And all the Indiana Jones movies were centered around this weird mysticism, whether it be Christian or other. I think that's part of the reason why I wasn't really a big fan of Crystal Skull. There were many reasons I wasn't a fan of Crystal Skull, but one of them is that it went towards more of a science fiction-y thing, and I like the weird, mysticism stuff at the end.
Indy's always been an action adventure as opposed to a science fiction adventure.
Right. And so when you start throwing in things like time travel is much more of a science fiction-y kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I just don't feel like that really belongs in Indiana Jones adventure. But I don't know. I mean, anything can work. Any story can work if it's done right and if it's done with sincerity, and especially if you're doing something around a character everybody respects, even if, because I mean, let's face it, Harrison Ford is 163 years old, so he does not need to be punching Nazis.
He did drink from the Grail, so yeah, he's a little bit older.
He is a little bit older. He looks like he's starting to resemble his George Hall counterpart now. And he just, I just don't want to see him trying to do all that stuff at his age. And I'm assuming they're going to recast the younger ones. Or I've heard that maybe de-aging software, having a young Harrison Ford again, which they can do.
That's what I've heard from the rumors, is that there is scenes with a younger Indiana Jones, and that's how he gets killed off so that Raiders and everything else doesn't then happen.
Yeah, and hopefully by the end everything is set back to normal and it's all about a quest for Indy. I guess that can work, but to your point, with Kathleen Kennedy involved, if she has that kind of involvement, it ain't gonna be good. It's going to be a big slap in the face to everybody that got her ousted. Yeah, and she seems like a bitter old crank to me at this point.
The impression I get as well. That, like I say, she seems like a bitter old You like say, if she's got the chance to just give one last turn of the screw, she will do it on her way out.
Yeah, and that's a shame because she has a chance. I mean, there's people like me who give their right arm to be able to work on an indie movie or something like that, or to be able to do their own story. And I would do it nowhere near as good as what has been done.
Yeah.
But I mean, to treat it like it's to work on Star Wars, to have access to all these things, and to treat them with such disrespect the way she has.
I
The
think that's the main issue.
ingratitude.
That's the main issue. That's the sort of issue I always had with Star Wars with her, is just treating the property with such disrespect. Is, you had a property like Star Wars, the biggest movie ever, everybody on the planet has heard of. You could go to the deepest, darkest jungles in Africa and say, may the force be with you, and they'd understand what you're saying. And to have that property and then just completely tear it down, it's just like you say, it's completely disrespectful. And if she's working on something like Indie, again, I watched all three of them the other day. I didn't bother looking at Crystal Skull, but I watched all three of them the other day. And Raiders of the Lost Ark is just almost one of those just perfect movies.
It is.
Everything about it works. The action, the adventure, Harrison Ford, the music, the direction, everything about that movie is absolutely beautiful. And I've never heard anybody say, not really a fan. Because you just wouldn't. But then the way that they've gone on, it is getting to a point where they will probably turn around and say, oh, do you know what? Yeah, I'm not really a fan of the last two.
Well, one of the things I put into my I think I said this when I first saw the Ghostbusters trailer. I think I responded to our article on Discuss or something like that. But I said, and then I was kind of surprised because I heard this from Jay on Red Letter Media for the Halloween Kills movie.
Oh, yeah, I watched that.
They were not fans, by the way. I found it amusing that they had some of the. In fact, Jay even, or was it Jay or Mike? But one of them noticed that the same thing I did, where Michael is trying out the different knives.
Yeah, it's funny.
Nope.
Oh, see this one. This is a good stabby one. This one. This is.
Yeah,
this is. I'll tell you this one. Yeah.
It's a good stabby one. You got to get the right one.
Yeah.
But what I did mention with the Ghostbusters one is that, and I was surprised to see Jay say the same thing too. Yes, I don't want things treated with disrespect. I also don't want I don't want to see the property within the new movie that's coming out treated with a reverence that it doesn't really deserve within its own universe.
Yeah.
And there seems to be this weird reverence with Ghostbusters. I'm like, Ghostbusters was all about irreverence. That was the fun of it. And like people say, well, you complain when it's all you disrespectful, but then when they're very respectful, you complain about that too. Yes, I complain about everything. Okay, that's the way I am. No, I there's a tonal things that you have to get right, and part of treating it respectfully is to try to capture the tone, the way that universe was, without shitting on it or elevating it to a status that it doesn't need to be. It's always moderation, everything in moderation, right? Don't go too far one way or the other way. That's all I'm asking.
You've got to make changes to keep up with the modern world and stuff, and that's completely understandable. But like you say, minor changes are not an issue. But when they are then forcing down our throats political statements and political correctness and everything else, that's when it all goes to pot.
I would agree, and that's so there is a difference between saying being overly respectful. That's one thing.
Yeah.
I would rather it be that way than to be what the Star Wars sequel trilogy ended up being. If I had to pick one or the other, if it's a decent story, I'm reserving my judgment on Ghostbusters. I haven't seen it yet. I don't know. Just the tone that I'm seeing is like when they showed the one trailer and they did Venkman's speech where he goes, call it fate, call it karma, but I believe we were destined. He's doing that speech to bullshit Ray. It's all horseshit. It's a sales pitch. It's his
Yeah,
smarmy sales pitch to make money. There and
it's
they
trailer
changed that.
taglines.
Yeah, and they changed it into like an actual Destiny profit, gravitas type of speech. I was like, when I saw that, I went, "Boy, you're missing the point here."
I must admit, I'm not looking forward to it at all. I'm not. I Don't get me wrong. I love both the original Ghostbusters. They're great. The 2016 was awful,
Oh,
and but with it, I don't hold it in the high esteem that many other people do. And I think from what I've seen, it is aimed at that nostalgia crowd. Those people that remember with that massive fond affection of everything. And I'm like I say, I'm not personally. I don't know. I'm just not bothered. But
well,
then
I
I've become very cynical with this new Hollywood. I think is my problem.
yeah, I can understand that. I've been pretty. I don't know. The nostalgia thing is starting to wear thin with me. So I mean, I'm like, I can only take so much nostalgia, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah.
But if it's done reasonably well and it's a little too much nostalgia, but the story is good and I enjoy it, I'll put up with it.
I will. I will give it a chance. I'm the same. I'm the kind of person that can't help but watch anything that's out there new. I know some people sort of say, "Oh, I'm not going to watch it." Like Sean has just said that he's not going to watch this new Ghostbusters, and like fair play to him for doing that. But I am somebody who's kind of, I
I
don't
think
want to watch it, but I'm going to try just to see if I am wrong, type of thing.
I
I
think
still
Sean
have.
might be talking about India. He might be talking about both of them. I don't know. Indiana
Well, I
Jones
think at
and
first he said that the new Indie's going to be terrible, and I think he's
yeah,
just mentioned that it's
he's not
the
gonna
new
watch it.
Ghostbusters.
Okay.
So I'll tell you
There's a,
what.
there's a delay here, guys, when you do those chats. So, we need specifics, and we're bad about that. That's why I try to keep in mind that some of this just gets listened to on our podcast. So I try to be a little bit more descriptive. But you're missing out if you're only listening on the podcast because we do have this on YouTube streaming.
I don't know what they're
Shill,
missing.
shill,
Seeing us.
shill, shill, shill.
So we will come back to modern movies in just a moment, but in the meantime, we have also, well, not also got to, but I mean, the biggest news this week is obviously the tragic accident of what happened on the set of Rust. Can you give us an overview?
I knew Alec Baldwin was just this close to snapping. And he clearly went on a rampage, and 17 people were murdered. And right now he's in a tower with a gun to his head. There's a big police standoff. Would you be surprised with Alec Baldwin if that's what it was? I mean, really?
I, I know. I mean, I know him from lots of things, but I'm a huge fan of 30 Rock. Love 30 Rock, and I love him in 30 Rock. I think he's absolutely brilliant. But I do know in his personal life he had that rant on the phone to his daughter, was it, a while ago? Which I'm always. It's the same as the rant that what's his name, Christian Bale had on the set of Terminator, I think it was. I do understand the pressure that they're under, and I do understand that everybody has an off day. There are times when I have ranted at my computer for not, pausing at the right time or whatever it might be. And so I do take those things with a pinch of salt, that it's kind of like, oh, look, Alec Baldwin's had a massive, Barney. And I think, well, yeah, fair enough. He may have had a really bad day and other things have been going on and so forth. And because of that, he's had a rant, but we're picking out this one thing. With this situation, obviously the details are scarce of what's happened, but basically he shot a director of photography and the director of the movie.
No, it was a photographer and the director of photography, I thought. You could be right. I don't know. Maybe it was the director of photography killed and the director got injured.
Right. Okay. Sorry. Just quickly looked it up because I had to double check as well. The film's director of photography, Helena Hutchins, and director Joel Souza were both shot with a prop gun. And unfortunately, Helena lost her life later in hospital.
And I would guess. So look, I want to be transparent here. I think Alec Baldwin is a nasty piece of shit. I do. I think his politics are ridiculous. I think he runs his mouth and he's done horrible things with his, like you said, with his daughter. I hear he's a real piece of shit to work with. And in general, I just don't like him at all. Okay, so I want you to understand where I'm coming from and what my
Yeah.
opinion is on Alec Baldwin. I think this was a horrible thing that happened to him, and I wouldn't wish it on him on his worst day.
Yeah.
Or anything. I mean, this is probably his worst day. This is real life shit here. This isn't just, running your mouth or playing
Yeah.
Trump or doing a bunch of
Yeah.
that kind of stuff.
It's not a Barney over the phone. This is serious.
Right. This is serious shit. A person has lost their life. And the questions that I have, first of all, I don't think in the scenario that this is, I don't think this is his fault. He was handed a gun by the prop master or the armor. I guess they have an arms master or a armorer.
Yeah.
They call
Somebody.
him an armorer.
Yeah.
And the armorer is in charge of making sure that everything is safe, that which gun you get, all that kind of stuff.
Mm.
I know he's a big anti-gun nut. So there's a few pieces, and he's the producer of the movie. So there's like 3 or 4 things that I have concerns with that I think are reasonable to bring up. Okay, so 1, you got an armorer here who had problems early on in the shooting. Like last week, they had the same problem happen, and people had walked off the set, so they knew it was unsafe. He's a producer of the movie. He should have a lot of say on whether or not those things get taken care of before the movie continues shooting.
And it seemed like nobody raised any major concerns about the whole situation either.
No, they did. They text messages.
Sorry, they did, but then nothing was actually done about it. Is what I meant.
Nothing was actually done about it. But I mean, there was a crew that walked off the set. And they haven't been back because they said it's too dangerous to be on the set anymore. So they're not.
Just to interject there, from what I've read from certain things, is that the crew were complaining about the work conditions, that being one of them, but also a huge commute, not getting paid early enough, and the actual conditions of the days were long as well. And that was
I have a feeling there's a lot of problems going on that set.
Yeah.
If they can't get a guy to properly check out the guns.
Yeah.
Okay.
But that's what I understand with the whole crew walking off thing. That is what I understand. Like I say, that there were a number of things. It wasn't just the fact that a firearm was shot, a week beforehand. That was just one.
No, that was probably a huge catalyst, though. I mean, if you have live fire going off, and you're scared. I mean, this is a Western, right? This movie is shooting, so people are shooting guns all over the place in this thing. So if you're working on that and you have 2 misfires, that's what they call them. Basically, twice a loaded gun got shot that shouldn't have been loaded. I would what the pay and all that shit would be way down the list. I'd be the fuck off that set too. Yeah. You cannot mess with guns. This is the thing that he talks about how bad the NRA is. I guarantee he hasn't had any NRA training because NRA would not put up with that shit.
No.
They are all about how to understand how to use these guns. So I don't know how much training Alec Baldwin has in this sort of thing. I have found that most anti-gun nuts don't really understand guns. I don't own a gun yet. I am planning to get one, but I guarantee you the first thing I'll be doing before I even run my credit card is making sure that I understand everything about that gun. And the things I know first are you don't put your finger on the trigger until you're ready to shoot. You don't point it at someone unless you're ready to obliterate them. And you always assume a gun is loaded. Always. So these are very important things that you need to deal with. Now, your armorer is supposed to make sure that all happens, that he has inspected that thing to the nines to make sure something like this doesn't happen. There was already an accident. He should have been fired. And they still went on with apparently this guy who had screwed this up. As I understand it, and this is not I don't know. I do know that a loaded gun and a unloaded gun weigh differently. However, we're talking about blanks and we're talking about a 6-shooter, like a revolver. not a heavy 9mm with a slide in mag and all that kind of stuff, right?
I'm talking to
So
a British person, so I have no idea. But
yeah, I understand. That's why I'm trying to kind of I'm
get
trying to
it, get
explain.
that
Yeah,
across.
trying
Get
to
that.
understand what people who
You're
understand
explaining it
guns.
to an idiot. I get
No, no. I mean,
it is.
you know what? I don't know that. I don't know enough about it either. I know the basics. Like when I hear somebody say they need to get rid of automatic weapons, it's like nobody's sold an automatic weapon in this country for 30 years. And you go, really? It's like, no, there's never, there may be some that are grandfathered in from like World War II and from all the way through Vietnam, but no, but they've been illegal for at least 30 years, maybe actually probably longer, somewhere in the 80s. An automatic. So what's the difference between an automatic, a semi-automatic, and a regular weapon? A regular weapon, you pull the trigger, you cock it, or you have to pull the hammer back, or you have to load the shell, and then you shoot it again. That's a non-automatic or semi-automatic weapon. A semi-automatic weapon is you cock it once, you pull the trigger, a bullet comes out, and it's ready to go again. You pull the trigger, another bullet comes out. An automatic weapon is you pull the trigger and hold it, and and bullets come spraying out. Okay,
like an Uzi.
Like an Uzi or a machine gun, right?
Right. Okay.
So you cannot have automatic weapons in this country anymore. They are illegal. They have been for many, many decades.
Yeah. Movies have lied to
Semi-automatic.
me a lot then.
What's that?
Movies have lied to me a lot then.
Oh, they have. Since I'm going to say since the 80s, that's been a thing.
I did not know that, so that's news to me.
A lot of people don't. A lot of people don't understand the difference. They get anti-gun and they talk about these things. I don't want to get all politically. I'm just trying to tell you the facts. The facts about guns and how people are ignorant of what the different types of guns are and how they work. And again, I'm not a gun nut. I've never wanted to own a gun. I've been pro Second Amendment, but I've never wanted to own a gun. I've only just now decided that I think it's a good idea because I can't, with the police being what they are and you can't count on anybody. And
in case Alec Baldwin comes around.
Or in case Alec Baldwin comes around and blows your head off in a Trump wig. He's, the thing is that, what do they say? When seconds count, the police are minutes away.
Right.
Right. So that's kind of where I've kind of gotten to. And, I live in a place that really isn't that big a deal. We don't have that much crime, but you never know the way things are deteriorating.
It's better to have one than not.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, my family's protection is my responsibility. So I try to treat it as such. As far as whether the gun weighs more when you're talking a 6-shooter, that is a prop gun and that kind of stuff, when it has fully loaded, I'm sure it does, but whether or not you can tell or not, I don't know. I don't know.
Again, that's one of those things that's been mentioned in movies. I think it was it in Taken? I think it was a friend of his pulls a gun out and he says, "Oh, because you've been sat behind a desk so much, you've forgotten how much it weighs." Yeah. But I always naturally assume that like a real expert who's handling a gun all the time. But I suppose, like I say, if he was on set, he would have been handling the gun quite a lot.
Yeah, well, yes, and this is where my ignorance. Yeah, this is where my ignorance is going to come in. I don't know how much that would have made a difference for him. So really, you got to talk about, well, whose responsibility that is this? Well, certainly the armorer who gave him a live pistol and didn't check it. I think that's a number one guy of gross negligence that needs to be taken into account.
From what I've read, just to interject there, from what I've read, obviously these are just news reports from different places, sure. But apparently the armorer did shout that the gun was cold, that the gun was safe.
Not live. That was safe. Yes. So then he was wrong.
So apparently that is what's happened. But like I say, obviously we just don't know at the moment.
We don't know, and so everything, understand everything I'm saying here is based on speculation, and based on reports, and based on my general knowledge of guns. I've fired guns. I'm not unfamiliar with them, and I know the basic rules of safety. Yeah. A movie set is a weird place, and you are firing guns on purpose in what's supposed to be a safe environment, right? Most of the time they're blanks and that kind of thing, but. I mean, to give you some examples, look at Brandon Lee. Yep. Brandon Lee was screwing around with a gun, thought it was unloaded, and killed himself, right?
No. That was the other guy. That was
John Eric Hexum.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Brandon Lee was shot in a stunt.
He was shot in a stunt. Okay, so
Yeah,
Brandon Lee was shot in a stunt. John Eric Hexum actually put a thing. He knew it was
yeah.
blanks, and he fired. Well, the
We thought it was
concussive
blanks.
force. No, it
Oh
was
no,
blanks.
sorry. Yeah, it was. Yeah, again, I
It
watched
was
that this
blanks.
afternoon. Yeah,
But the
yeah.
concussive force blew the skull in and gave him such brain damage.
Damage. Yeah.
He couldn't come back. So Brandon Lee was an onset accident. And then you think about things like the Twilight Zone with the helicopter and things like that, right? Yes, bad things happen, accidents happen on sets. That's reasonable, but the gun accident to me is somewhat inexcusable if you because you hire people for this specific purpose, gun experts, for a specific purpose of making sure that no one gets hurt. And it's one of the most important jobs on an action movie like this to
Yeah.
know. Don't point the gun at, make sure the right ammo's in there. Keeping your ammo separate from, because sometimes they do fire live rounds. If they're like in a target range or something and they're filming somebody at a target range, they may have live rounds in that.
See,
Lethal Weapons did that, right?
Just to interject here. This is where I have the issue, and I had a problem with the fact that when I first read about it, I was out and about, and I kind of quickly read about it and thought, obviously it's awful and everything else. My initial thought was this had been what happened to Brandon Lee. That with Brandon, one of the guns, from reports, were that the blank had something in the barrel, which then actually lodged into his spine and then killed him.
Yeah.
I can kind of understand how in a scene where he is supposed to have been shot, and like in these westerns, obviously everybody's shooting each other, that guns are going off all the time. And I was under the impression that when this happened, before reading the details, that it was a fellow actor or stuntman had been shot because he had a gun and it shot and it killed this person. I couldn't understand why the weapon was discharged what seemed to be in between takes and hit the director of photography and the director of the movie. I can understand it if there's a shootout between two people, one of them getting shot, but to shoot the director, it's kind of, why were you pointing the gun in that direction?
Well, you've seen where they have directly at and James Bond starts out every time, right at the camera.
Yeah, yeah.
And usually the director would be right behind the photographer to judge the shot, because they have the monitor right there. My guess is because it was only one shot, if I'm hearing correctly. And Sean's on here, and he's got. I think he knows a lot about guns, a lot more than I do. He says, "Don't say misfire, say negligent discharge." I would agree with that. It was somebody shooting on purpose, but not knowing what was in the barrel of the gun. I have heard there could have been something in the barrel of the gun. If it's in there, it could have been a BB. It would have blown right through the person.
Because again, my understanding is it went through the director of photography, Helena. It went through her and then into the director.
1986 was the cutoff date for machine guns, so I thought it was the 80s, and it's also he says his fault. It's also Baldwin's fault. It's your responsibility to make sure the condition of any gun you touch. I think that's reasonable. I think that if he gets handed a gun, he's told a certain thing, that it's not unreasonable to say, okay, I'm going to open it up. I'm going to check the rounds. I'm going to check the barrel. Especially a gun like that, you should be able to do that before you actually start, pulling the trigger on it. Yeah. There's no downside to having that last check.
Yes.
Plenty of upside. As the
poor
with
lady
it,
when you say that last check, they must go through the weapon must go through several people's hands.
Well, this is where Hollywood actors don't know shit about guns, and I've heard them say stupid things. And I'm not a gun expert. I may have gotten some things wrong that I've talked about. Sean has called me out on a couple of things, and that's fine. I'm perfectly willing to be educated. But my point is that they put these things that are dangerous, even if they're firing blanks, into the hands of anti-gun Hollywood types who haven't done the training that they probably should. I remember when they were doing The Matrix, and I was watching some of the behind the scenes, and I know that the main people, Carrie-Anne Moss, Keanu,
Lawrence Fishburne,
they were given some pretty intense firearms training as well
Yeah.
as their other stuff, and to understand how guns work, what they do, and a lot of it was for the realism, but a lot of it was to understand the safety because
Yeah.
just that
Because
lobby
of things,
scene alone. Good
because of
God,
things of what have just happened. Obviously, if that happened
right?
on every movie, there would be major issues.
Yeah, it would be a lot quieter on Twitter, so there's always an upside. But but look, like I said, I don't like Alec Baldwin. I don't like his politics. I think he's an idiot, and I have extreme doubts that he ever bothered to really understand
Yeah.
guns properly. That all being said, this this is a tragedy. This is going to be rough on him. I would say that there is some, I don't know what the legal ramifications are going to be. I don't know. The courts are going to decide, and let's face it, the courts. You got money, you got power, you're going to get away with stuff that
Yeah.
maybe I wouldn't. Especially since he's on the correct side of
Yeah.
the
The whole
political
gun
aisle, right?
thing. Yeah. Yeah.
So there is whether or not he gets charged for this, whether or not he should get charged for this, I am unclear. I don't know. I really
There,
don't know. I would say the
there.
armor, absolutely.
Yeah, I was going to say the blame is going to lie obviously with somebody at some point.
Yeah. And I'm
With all of
talking,
these
there's
things.
a difference between criminal and
Yeah.
civil. He may get sued and that may go through just fine. He may get nailed on that one. And I don't think that that's unreasonable that he gets sued to death.
Yeah.
But as far as criminal, I don't know.
It
But here, let me throw in this one extra thing
Yeah.
though.
No,
Let me
go
throw
on.
in this one extra thing that kind of throws a monkey wrench in the whole thing. He is a producer on the film, which means he has authority to decide who stays and who goes. And if this
Yeah.
stuff had happened earlier in the week and he did nothing about it, he may have a huge negligence charge. And whether
If
or
he
not
was trying to get it.
he pulled the trigger, another actor pulled the trigger, he may still get
Yeah.
that I don't know that he's going to get away with. That's the part that I'm really confused on from a legal standpoint.
It's going to be, I mean, unfortunate, but it's going to be interesting the way this plays out. I mean, obviously, the initial knee-jerk reaction is to make sure this doesn't happen again. And I mean, this is the first shooting that we've heard of since, oh goodness me, when did The Crow come out? It was what, 90 something, wasn't it? 94, 95. Yeah, I mean, so I mean, it's not like this is a regular occurrence, but obviously this has to make sure that this kind of thing doesn't happen again with anyone.
I would agree. Sean says the armorer was a female, FYI. I could do all the jokes on that, but I mean, really, it doesn't matter. Just to be correct, she should have done better.
Yeah.
But I don't think that male or female it really matters. To be able,
You should be doing your job regardless.
to do your job, yeah. And I think that, I mean, I've known women who are excellent with guns, who really know their shit. So I mean, I don't think I don't think that goes into it other than for me being correct, and when I reference the armor, then I say
Sorry,
she.
that's my phone going. So sorry. Somebody's just going to answer that. We
That's
never get
okay.
phone calls. I don't know who it could be.
It's probably well, we're talking about guns, so it's probably the British police coming to get you.
No, I think it's all right.
But
so
yeah,
like I say, the whole obviously situation with Alec was terrible. And we wish all the best to the family of the poor lady that lost her life, and hopefully, like I say, that it will rectify itself in the best way that it can, whatever it might be. But let's move on to
and let me
the
just
other-
say to put a cherry on top here, I don't believe that Alec Baldwin is a murderer or like this was pre-planned or any of that kind of stuff. If there's any of that kind of weirdness going on, this is a terrible accident. Nobody deserves to have this happen to him. Nobody, but this is, you're working with dangerous stuff. This happens. We're just going to have to let the story play out. And anybody, I'm only speculating on things that I've heard.
Yeah.
New information will come and I will probably change my opinion. We may talk about it again, but I'm saying that we, what we
It's
know and what the basics are, I think, are reasonable.
it seems like just a terrible accident that has taken place on a movie set.
With some possible negligence. I think it's reasonable
Yes,
to say if there
yeah,
was
yeah.
negligence.
Sorry, yeah, yeah.
Beyond that, I don't think anything else. And again, I don't think this was something that Baldwin. I don't think he's a rampaging murderer. We're just trying to lighten the mood here because it's an awful, awful thing.
Indeed. So let's lighten the mood a little bit by switching to something else. And the other big news. Now, I have been waiting for Dune to come out since I heard it was going to get a remake, and then B, when it was Villeneuve. Is that the correct pronunciation?
Sure. Okay.
But wherever it is, he was doing it because I like him. And then I was supposed to be seeing it last December, but because of COVID and everything else, it got put back and back and back. But this Thursday, I was able to get to see it on the big screen.
Okay.
Now,
So what I want you to do, I want you to go through the plot basics. What was it about? And I'm going to grab a drink here real quick.
Okay.
You have the floor. I'll be back in a minute.
Okay. I mean, it's a difficult thing to put into basics because it is sort of quite a complicated plot. It's based on the book by Frank Herbert. There is a Dune series of books. I have never read the books. I am not a reader. I've never read the books, but it's about battling houses and families in respect to a particular planet in a, I don't know if it's set in the future, but whether it's set like in our universe or a different universe. But the planet Arrakis, also known as Dune, is where spice is found, and spice is the most expensive commodity in the known galaxy. It's used by the locals to prolong life and to give them hallucinogenic powers, but it's also used by space navigators to create, I don't want to say wormholes, we'll come on to that, but they can travel great distances because of this spice. And these battling families of trying to find out where, who controls the spice. He who controls the spice controls the universe. And so
a point of order, you gotta say the spice.
Okay, sorry. The spice.
There you go. The spice melange.
And the actual the story is very deep. It's wonderfully, it's deep, but it's kind of, if you know it, you don't. But if I was to sort of say the House Atreides and the Harkonnens and the different everybody else, it does get complicated. But it's kind of. Are you saying that about the story?
No, remember I said the camera's giving me problems.
Oh, there you go.
Problems.
Oh, there you go. Oh, look, he's gone all rainbow coloured. Hooray!
I went all rainbow colored. I gotta fix this shit.
Okay. Yeah, the story is quite complicated, but sort of wonderfully complicated. It's not like overly complicated. If you go and see the film, it tells the story very, very well. Now, obviously, this was a movie back in 1984 by David Lynch. Now, I've always enjoyed that movie. I've always thought it was a very solid movie. Wasn't perfect. I watched it recently in the last 12 months, I think it was, and the special effects do suffer in this day and age. There are certain times when you can see it's been, I can't remember what the expression is now, but where they cut them out and draw them out and so forth. It's not very well done. Some of the sets and some of the costume design were excellent. And then it suffered with, I said this in my review, if you go to thelastmovieoutpost.com, that it suffered with some of the cast, like Sting was a very odd inclusion. And also, I'm going to say this is really horrible, but Alicia Witt at the end plays Paul's sister, young Paul's sister. And I always thought she was just not very good. Her audio dub replacement wasn't very good, and I was just not a fan of her. So the film was a great movie, but it wasn't told particularly well with the time and technology that they had. And I always thought the film could do with a remake. And I heard Villeneuve was doing it. I was a fan of Blade Runner 2049. I thought it was a solid remake and very well done. Excellent tone. Dune, I thought, was close to perfection. The film was fantastic. I thoroughly enjoyed every single second of it. I've actually seen it twice now because I watched it the following night at home. But seeing it on the big screen, it was incredible. The music, the atmosphere, the special effects, everything that they did about it was absolutely spot on.
Yeah,
There we go.
it's totally screwed. So
Oh, okay. I'm just
what I'm
going to
going
be
to
looking at me.
do, I'm going to change my camera to my crappy old laptop camera here.
They're not as bad as
Just
what you say.
just to get us going. No boy, that's a problem. Don't know if I could do
Techno-
it while I'm watching you. That's the problem. I can't do two. Okay, well,
Oh well, you just have to stick with my gorgeous face. That's fine.
might have
Um,
to. Yeah, I don't know. Let me see what I can come up with here.
okay. Well, I'm just going to carry on talking about it. I'd like to say I thought it was fantastic. It was really well done. The quality of the special effects, the costumes, and the set design. There are certain times when special effects can ruin things and take you out of the movie. For example, the biggest ones. I watched Lord of the Rings recently, and the whole bit where Legolas jumps up on the horse just looks bad. And I think it was Matrix 2 where the agent slowly jumps on the car, and again, the CG just doesn't look good. In this, I couldn't fault the visuals at all. Anywhere, there is nowhere in this movie that you're watching that you think to yourself, I don't believe that, because the whole thing was just set in this amazing reality. I thought it was incredible work. The same with the music. The music was bizarre, but fitted the tone of everything very, very well. I did have issues with the film, minor ones. I'm just waiting. Are you back now?
More or less. I have an old webcam here that I was able to set up on top of my good camera to look at. So it's like right there. It's really pathetic. But let me see how it looks with this'll do for the time being.
Okay.
God, I love our
There's me. I was just talking about the technology of Dune and how
God
I
damn
thought
it.
visually the film was perfect. You couldn't rate it. You couldn't
Sure.
fault any of it. Um, Now, like I say, I've just given my take on it. I've tried to do a brief description of the story, which I've done in the simplest terms because it is quite complicated. But what was your take on Dune?
I was quite frankly blown away. I'd watched the 1984 Dune not that long ago, and it was I just found it opaque, you know. Trying to figure out why or what people are doing, and the plot
Yeah.
points are drowned out by people having these weird poetic soliloquies, or they're just whispering into the camera, and it's not. None of it makes any sense to me. Quite frankly, I was just having troubles trying to figure out what am I watching here? What are they doing? Why are they doing what they're doing? I don't
It,
know.
I'm right in saying that that's the first time you've seen the 84 version, though? Quite
No,
recently.
I tried to watch it when it came out, like when I was a teenager, and then I tried to watch it again, probably I don't know, 20 years later or something like that, and then I tried to watch it again recently, and each time I was like, nope,
Okay.
just tap it
Okay.
out.
No, because I remember seeing it quite young, and I think I've seen it. It's one of those films that I've seen several times, the 84 version, and I've always enjoyed it. But
Have you read
I
the
think,
book?
no, I was saying earlier, I never read the
Okay,
books. Never do the books. I am dyslexic. From when I read, if you listen to my podcast, you'll hear me even reading short sentences. Sometimes it's absolutely horrendous, and it's because I'm dyslexic. I just don't read very well. So for me, reading a book it is a waste of time. It's horrible, but that's me. But I do feel that the original Dune did tell the story quite well. However, I think what you were going to go on to say is that the detail of the characters in this new version is so much wider.
it is, and motivations, and that one thing Villeneuve did that I made a note of was that he somehow made it more accessible,
Yeah.
um, and yet did not in any way dumb it down. I did not feel like they were injecting. It's like when you hear 21st century slang in Star Trek. It's really
Yeah, yeah,
off-putting.
yeah.
There was they did have their moments where they spoke in much more highbrow ways, but there were times where they kind of backed it off a little bit because of the situation or because of the intensity of the moment. But it always felt natural to me. It never felt they never, you go boy, and never had a moment like that shit in
Yeah.
there, So I really appreciated that they were able to do some really good things with it, and it never came across stupid. It helped me understand the things that were happening in the universe and why people were doing what they were doing. And I mean, what is it, like 2 hours and 30 minutes? I mean, it's not short,
But
but
it's weird that you say that, because one thing I did notice that was missing was the voiceovers. The whole bit with the hunter seeker, where Paul is in his room and that this thing comes through the wall. In the original,
I was so
you've
happy
got
about that.
but it was weird because Carl McLaughlin was sort of saying, "I must stay still and it's going to be slippery and all this kind of thing and everything else," whereas they didn't do that in this one. And if you knew the story, you knew that a hunter seeker was slippery and you had to stay still. But it was still told in a narrative way that you knew what was going on. You didn't need his voiceover to confirm
No,
what you were seeing
visually
on the
it was
screen.
perfect.
Yeah,
Oh, and visually, this may be one of the most this is like Prometheus levels of stunning. Everything looked absolutely like it looked real. Like
I
those weird thopters, those dragonfly things, they looked fantastic. I never once thought that's a CGI thing.
that's I was just saying before you got back that I watched Lord of the Rings again recently, all of them, and there's a bit where Legolas jumps up on the horse, and you look at it and go, terrible CG. And in The Matrix 2, when the agent jumps on the car, terrible CG, and it just takes you out of the film for just a moment.
Right.
Whereas in Dune, like I say, even watching it twice, there is no image on screen that I didn't believe was a real place or person or creature or whatever. Everything about them visually, everything about the movie was as close to perfection as you could make it.
Now it's about as long as the 1984 version. It may be even longer, but it's only telling half of the book to its
Yes.
benefit.
Yeah. Well, see, this is where I had a major problem with it, because I knew the original movie and how the original movie then went on to Paul trains with the Fremen and his name becomes a killing word, and the Emperor comes to Arrakis and everything else. When the movie ended, I was really annoyed. Really, really annoyed, because I could have sat there for another hour and a half and watched the whole story play out.
Well, I hope now. I have not heard if it's. I know they want to make a sequel, but it really is going to depend on how well this does.
I'm sure I read it has already been greenlit.
I hope so and I hope Villeneuve does it because I don't know. I just feel like when I'm watching anything that's done by this guy, I'm watching something that's being done by an adult
Yes.
with grown-ups in the room, and they're
Yes.
building a story. All his stuff just feels like there's grown-ups in the room and they're writing stories with people who are adults, not
And I
not
think it's
children making quips.
And also, I think he is somebody who, if somebody says to him, "Look, do you think this, and this?" that he is somebody who then goes, "That is a good point. Maybe we need to change this," as
Yeah,
opposed to just
yeah,
being
I think
surrounded
you're
by
right.
yes men who is, just sort of like, he decides to do this, and everybody goes, "Yeah, that's a brilliant idea. Well done." I think he is somebody who takes on board whatever needs to make that movie work.
I have seen a little bit of his behind the scenes on Arrival, and he just seems like a very approachable kind of guy.
Yeah.
And so I watched this movie. I was impressed by the detail. No detail was ignored, and the acting was superb in it. I had
Mhm.
no issues with any of that. Oscar Isaac is great. Uh, Jason Momoa is great. Um,
I'm not a fan of Jason Momoa. I always think he plays the tall, bearded dude.
I thought he did. I thought he did a fine job in
But
this.
he did. He was he was a likable character. You know, you could tell the relationship between him and Paul and the rest of them. You know, he was kind of the guy that you could sort of sit down with and have a chat and you know, he would be on your side in a fight type of thing. And yeah, I'm not a fan of him, but Duncan as a character I thought was great.
Yeah, I think he did a great job as Duncan. I think the kid is great. I forget his name, but
Timothy Chalamet.
Timothy Chalamet. I think he did a great job as Atreides. He plays the part as I would expect, and he looks as I would expect. And I love that like they have the setup where he's training, and he's clearly very good with Gurney, who also, I mean, you got Thanos, Aquaman, and Poe Dameron all in the same movie. What's not to like? So
Well, apart from Poe Dameron's being good, but yeah.
Yeah. Oscar Isaac. Let's just.
I was going to say, and as an actual character arc over him, yeah.
But I mean, we got a lot of franchises all coming together here. And,
but I mean, the actual cast, I said, to me, the cast was perfection. All of them fitted the tone. The only issue I had was with the Baron, and I compared him to the original played by Keith McKenneth, I think he was called. I can't remember his name now, but
the guy, the floating bag of pus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in that original movie, he was, like I say, you could smell him on screen. He looked disgusting, and he was evil, but he was gross and everything with it. And don't get me wrong, Stellan, what is
Skarsgård?
Skarsgård is fantastic, and I love him. But he was evil, but he just didn't disgust me in the way that the original one did.
I kind of like the original one. That guy, he's just kind of clownish to me. He's just too over the top.
Okay.
With all of it, and maybe that's the way he was written. I don't know. I felt like this guy, he was gross, and certainly once he was in his tar pool of healing his bacta tank or whatever, he wasn't looking so good. But
I wouldn't want him around for dinner.
No. But I thought he played him well with a lot of. I like the quiet menace kind of thing. You know.
See, again, that was one of the only other minor issues I had with the movie was in more than a couple of occasions was picking up on the dialogue, particularly the Baron. I did have issues. I just couldn't catch what he said, and even watching it at home had the same issue.
There was one or two times I think there was some dialogue issues that I had. I actually watched it with the closed captioning on because my mother-in-law wanted to watch it, and I knew that I was going to be. What did he say? What was that mean? What did he? Yeah, she could. It's easier for her to read.
Why is he after Spice?
Yeah,
is that Old Spice?
Yeah, is he making a cilantro? So you know, there's a lot of that kind of thing that we were able to I was able to deal with it, that I may have had the same problems if I hadn't had that on. Okay. I do think it's kind of hilarious that as much as Zendaya is in the promos and everything, she's barely in the movie.
Yeah.
And I understand she will be in the second half.
Yes.
That character will be, but it's not. Yeah. She's barely in it in this one. But the look and the sets and the acting, I love the cinematography, which has kind of that. Some people call it ugly, but I think for this movie it fits because it looked really beautiful, but not Technicolor pop, not vivid colors, but it looked really beautiful on Atreides World, whatever that's called.
Caladan.
And then what's it called? Caladan. So it looks good there, and then it gets kind of a dull, much more dull. But he straddles the line that, you know, because of all the special effects, everything looks exceedingly real, and Dune is pretty much a shithole. So Arrakis, in a lot of ways, because it's just a barren, you know, sandy.
Yeah,
it's Tatooine.
Yeah.
And you know, I loved the, you know, that it wasn't a comic book movie with bright colors or a Flash Gordon or something like that. I liked the muted palettes.
It's funny that you say that, because I try to think of a spectacle as big as this for the last few years, and the only two movies that came to particular mind was Endgame and Rise of Skywalker, because they're sort of the two biggest things that I can think on the same sort of scale. Now, Endgame did, I found, suffer that final battle. It looks great, but none of it is real. That it looks spectacular and everything else, but that none of it happened because it is just a comic book movie.
Yeah.
And the same with the Rise of Skywalker. The whole some people have described that bit where Poe flies up over and all the ships are there, is epic. And to me, I just kept looking at it going, they all managed to squeeze through that little space portal whole thing. And it looked, both Endgame and Rise of Skywalker were trying really hard to impress you, to make sure that you came away going, whoa, that was epic. Whereas this film did that, but didn't force it.
Well, I'd agree. There was a lot of, there was, when you say epic, I mean, there was some big special effects moments in there, but they were, if you want to talk about in service to the story, this is a textbook example of it. But there was also a ton of moments where it was like, I don't know, maybe 100 guys total in this one room, and they were surrounding the Duke's men from the House Atreides. The one coming on one, the salad men, from the Emperor and the Harkonnens, and they were,
I kept calling the Benny Gesserits, Benny and Jerry's, the Benny and Jerry's sisters.
But it was just a quick battle. It wasn't 8 million people. It was like 100 people at the most, and they just had this quick little battle, and it was visceral, and it was good, and the only thing you had was the weird shields, and that was it, and that was it worked. I loved it.
But then conversely, it was a well thought out fight as well.
Yeah.
That, it was, these guys are attacking from things, so these ones are going to drop in behind, and then they've got them cornered, and so they overpowered them. As opposed to, again, just sort of coming back to the Rise of Skywalker, the whole bombs in space, how bombs seem to fall down in space where there's no gravity and everything. And, you're watching it and going, well, this doesn't make sense.
No, I agree.
There is no point in Dune that I thought to myself, this doesn't make sense. Even like you say, those copters, which obviously are not real. Me and my friend were talking about it because we saw it in the cinema, and he's quite big on military stuff, and he sort of said he doesn't obviously understand how it works, but he would have said the rotary system would be better. But then we were discussing, but in the desert, would it be? But at no point did you think, well, that's just stupid, it doesn't exist. It did. They're real. Somebody's built them somewhere and flying them around.
The Thopter is what they were. I know that because I read it when they said it. It was kind of hard to tell when they were talking about it. But yeah, I agree. I mean, these and then when they're crashing, like he pulls in the wings and gets just swept up by the storm, then he has to pull out the wings. One of them breaks off. It's all everything has weight. Yes. Everything feels real. And, I mean, so many people get killed in this that I mean, I guess I should have known because I do remember these. See, I remember moments from 1984 Dune. I remember the little thing that you had to be quiet or else it would kill you, right?
Hunter Seeker, yeah.
The Seeker. I remember him with the gas. I remember the floating booger guy. I remember, I remember these moments, but I don't remember the cohesive. I can't figure out the cohesive story. Here it was the opposite. It was like everything was perfectly in place, perfectly set up, executed perfectly, photographed perfectly. I mean, look, the only reason you don't like this movie is because it's just not your cup of tea. Yeah, it is a lot of dense.
It is science fiction.
World building.
Some people don't enjoy science fiction, which I completely get.
Yeah, and this one is more dense than others. It's not as accessible. I think you have to really. You do have to put a little effort into understanding that there's a lot going on here, but he made this more accessible, like I said, without dumbing it down in the slightest. And that made it a lot more fun to watch and to get swept up into the world. It did feel like a throwback to the 80s, funnily enough. I don't know how to describe it, but just this, we're just going to build this whole damn world and throw you in the middle of it. And good luck.
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah. Well,
And
like Star Wars did. I mean, I've always said that, Star Wars is the original trilogy is always something that has happened somewhere in the universe, and we just happen to film it. And I've
yeah,
always, I know it's obviously not real, but it always felt real.
yeah,
And the same with this. Like you say, you can't fault the fact that every planet they went to is a planet somewhere out there where people are walking around.
it did feel like it, and I'm sure a ton was on blue screen and everything else. I mean, I'm not faulting any of that, but it, as far as, so from effects wise, it didn't show any of the seams. From a story wise and character wise and plot wise, it was just marvelously executed, in my opinion. Some people say maybe it's too long or whatever. It was enough to make me a Dune fan, whereas before I was Dune curious. Uh, uh, I'm
You
a little
haven't quite
Dune curious myself.
you haven't quite tasted the spice yet.
Yeah, I haven't quite tasted the spice, but I'm ready to put some spice in my mouth. Uh, so, wow, this just took a turn. So the the movie is, I can't recommend it enough. I will be sorely disappointed if they don't finish this out. Uh, but it's definitely has it's an epic. It's a well told and well acted epic. And
I genuinely can't think of what to compare it to. I mean, to me, I was raised on all kinds of things, and I mean, like the original Ben-Hur with Charlton Heston and the Ten Commandments and that kind of thing. Those were proper epic movies. And I know you've had some, in between and everything else. Gladiator, I think, is probably the closest thing it comes to. Where again, with Gladiator, it is set in a real world where you are following Maximus throughout this whole story of what he went through. And even the Marvel movies, they are brilliantly done, and I love them. But there are some of them that are just not as real as what Dune was. I think Dune has set a precedent, which is, I don't think, going to be hit probably until the next one comes out.
yeah, I mean, so if you're going to do an epic properly, one of the things that I think the best ones do, Star Wars did this. I think Lord of the Rings did this. The first ones, anyway.
Yeah.
And there's probably some others people can pick out. But one of the things that I think is very important when you're going to do one of these is that you do not inject our world bullshit into it. So you don't have quippy little lines. You don't have a slang that's beyond what, and you believe these people are of another time and place that is alien to us, but the basics of humanity are there. I want to live. I want to survive. I want to do good. I want to defeat evil. I mean, all those basics are there, right? I want power. I want to own this. The villains have, so it's got all the basic tropes. And then you got to build all the details of this society in a way that would be vastly different from anything that we have right now. So the way they behave with each other, the way they dress, the way they, but there's really, like one of the things I think the 1984 Dune is missing is those moments of humanity where Atreides where Paul would just smile and hug a friend he hasn't seen in a while.
Yeah.
Those kinds of moments, they didn't feel forced or tacked on. They felt natural in the way they should be.
Even though I like the fact that Paul was the Duke's son, and I compared the Carl McLachlan to Timothy Chalamet, how Carl McLachlan always felt like he was a trained Duke's son, and he always had like an air of something about him that he knew he'd had the best training and he'd been taught in the best schools and everything else, and he had this air of not audacity, that's not the right word, but this air of what am I trying to say, regalness about him, if you like. And whereas Timothy Chalamet, like I say, was very much a kid. He was quite wimpy, but like I say, when he saw his friend, he ran up and hugged him. And I'm thinking, there they are arriving on the planet for the first time. And, my kid's son runs out and hugs the guy there, but that's how he reacted because he hadn't seen his friend for a long time. And again, like you say, he was much more human and accessible and got stronger as he went on. I thought he became more of a man towards the end, and then I mean I was hoping to see him, full man, but obviously I got to wait till the next one.
Well, that's true, but I did like that. Okay, like this wimpy kid basically plays with this guy and kicks his ass at the end when they have that
Yeah,
fight of honor, or whatever you want to call it. Um, the challenge fight, kind of like when Cleon's challenged the captain or something.
yeah,
And that was set up beautifully at the beginning
yeah,
of the movie. We know he's a good fighter, and we know that with the shield and with the blade, he is fast. He didn't overpower the guy. He was just fast enough and smart enough to know where the points were, and it all came across like it was a beautiful setup, beautiful payoff. Thank you.
and again with it was a good setup that he had those moral objections that his mum said he's never killed a man.
Yeah,
and he didn't
that
want
was
to do
great.
that. But he knew he was in a situation where he was going to have to, and so, if it was taking a life was what it was going to take, then he had to take that life.
So overall, would you recommend the movie?
Absolutely. I've seen it, like I say, I've seen it twice. I'm going to give it a break now, but I will sit down and watch it again a few more times before the end of the year, because to me it had minor faults. Like I say, because I don't think any movie is ever perfect. It had minor faults, but overall, it is one of the most spectacular things I have seen in a long time.
Well said. I would say if you could watch Halloween Kills, I would go for that instead. But no, it's too good a movie. It's really impressive.
Halloween Kills is great as a comedy. It's hilarious. It's really good. But if you want to see a serious, well-made science fiction epic movie, you will not. Do you know what? Like I say, for the past 20 odd years, you will not find anything finer than Dune.
I would agree. I was pleasantly surprised. I was afraid that we were going to get into one that kind of reminds me of Dune 1984 as a bit of a noble failure would be John Carter. John Carter is full of Barsoom and all these different phrases and everything. It's just kind of opaque, trying to keep up with who does what where, and there's nothing enjoyable about it. So it's not always easy to translate these properly, because when you're reading it, they take the time in the prose to kind of explain everything.
Yeah.
You can't do that in a movie, because you got to keep the story moving along, and it would come across as unnatural. That's why people hate narrating.
All the actors go, she's riding the worm because she's trained it to do that, and so she's like, all right, okay, I'm back to it. Okay. It's only just begun.
Yeah, it's like the Hitchhiker's Guide, where they would cut away. It says, according to the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Yeah. Which is done in a perfect way in Hitchhikers. Yes, that's like you say, but that's the tone of that whole thing. And I was thinking, with sci-fis, I was then thinking of like Flash Gordon, how obviously from the original Flash Gordon, the B movie series going to the film, they just went full camp. We're just going full camp with this. Everybody's having fun, and it worked for that movie. Whereas with this, they've taken everything seriously and they've planned everything meticulously as they can, and because of it, it has worked in every respect.
Making it accessible is the thing that's the hard piece. If you're going to do something like this and make it accessible, that people, Lord of the Rings did it.
Yeah.
It's a dense world that he created, and he did it. And I feel like he did this, that Villeneuve did the same with Dune. And I hope that it gets more people watching it, more accolades. That Rotten Tomatoes was only 87%. What's
that got to do with anything?
I'm curious. That's what I'm curious to see what the it got 83%, which I'm kind of surprised but I want to see. Okay, yeah, the audience score is 91%. So I think the audience is that's good. I think it's going to do better than it shows, and hopefully it's done a lot of work on
that's really
good on HBO Max, but
I can't understand anybody watching it and not liking it, unless, like you say, you're just not a fan of sci-fi. I don't get that. Even 91, I do think to myself, what 9% of people still, not a fan. Didn't rate that.
No, I think that Dune is there is a specific taste for it, you know. My wife tried to watch it. She's like, "What the fuck is this?" It'd be the same as if I went and watched Cats, you know. So I get it. She doesn't like it. It's not her cup of tea,
Yeah.
and that's fine. But I mean, as far as if you like any of this, or if you have any interest in it, and you want to see a well put together movie, with the understanding is that you're going to be a little disappointed that it's only half a movie. It's still amazing.
The end to me was very Empire Strikes Back. That kind of Empire Strikes Back didn't. I mean, it had obviously that dramatic scene with Luke and Vader, but it just sort of ended on that kind of cliffhanger, and I didn't expect that. Really, when you think about it, the end of the movie didn't really have like a dramatic Death Star explosion. It ended actually with that little hand-to-hand combat, but then the first time when I watched it and it ended, I was annoyed because I don't wear a watch at all, and I was sat there ready for another hour and a half's worth to finish it off, and it ended, and I was kind of, huh?
Yeah, I remember thinking, "What about Han? He's still a handsicle. You gotta get him."
There's so much that they haven't done yet, but then the bit where she says this is just the beginning, when I watched it on the second time, I did sit there and then go, "Oh, please do part 2."
Yeah. Do you think this is something they should do as a trilogy, or perhaps they should do it as 2 movies would be enough?
I mean, I don't know the books. I have my friend who I went with has read all the books, and he reckons that this movie was about 2/3 of the first book, and there's 3 books. And so, I mean, we were discussing it, and we would have said, that they could break it down into about 4 movies, possibly, depending on how they do it. In the same way that Endgame, Infinity Wars and Endgame was supposed to be 1 film, but then they split it into 2, and they split it, really well. And so, again, there could be 4 movies out of this, maybe 5. Because, I mean, again, you say about watching it and it was long. I'm sure we've done a report on the website saying that there is apparently a version kicking around of like 4.5 hours.
Oh, I'm sure there is.
Which I would love to watch. I couldn't get enough of it. But it depends on obviously how he then breaks down the rest of the books. And I think he's probably got the advantage that a lot of people obviously like me are comparing this to the original Dune. There was a TV series on Sci-Fi which didn't do very well with James McAvoy, I think. And I suppose if you don't know the books, it depends what he's then going to do with them, whether he is going to give the same treatment to the other books and break them down into a wonderful way, or whether he's then going to do like a Hobbit and start adding characters and whatnot.
Yeah, I don't see Villeneuve that kind of director. I just don't. He's done he's done a variety of different types of movies. Although at this point he's done a lot more sci-fi.
Yeah, yeah.
Sicario was tremendous.
Prisoners was very good.
Prisoners, I haven't seen Prisoners, but I'll have to give that a shot. Arrival was fantastic.
Yep.
Blade Runner 2049 I thought was really good, but I understand why people kind of like drags and that kind of stuff. So there's one where he used much more eye-popping color, and yet it still looked fantastic. It never betrayed visual effects
the original.
on that one either.
Yeah.
The 2049.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. I mean, I'd be fine if he did a trilogy or a quadrilogy if he did, and adopted all the books. I don't know enough about it, but I don't. I sure loved what I did see, and I definitely want to see at least the back half of this book done.
Yeah. I think, like I say, if he just keeps up the same standard, which I think he does, I mean, he is one of those directors that I've been doing a write-up for the 31 Days of The Shining, and I firmly believe that Kubrick was somebody who every frame meant something. And the same with Villeneuve. I think he is the same kind of person, that every frame means something, and every frame is examined to make sure that there is just no dead time in the movie at all. And if he carries on like this, he is going to make, I think, one of the most spectacular science fiction series since Star Wars.
I think weirdly, I think he's actually become an underrated director, because you don't put him in the same, for whatever reason. I would, but I mean, you don't hear him in the same breath as a Coppola or Spielberg or Scorsese or that kind of thing. and yet I think all of his movies are pretty magnificent and
Yeah.
pretty impressive. They just, I don't know, they haven't had that mainstream appeal enough. Maybe
Yeah.
that's it. And that's a
Yeah.
shame because I think he's wildly talented and probably my favorite director working right now.
He is, like I say, I can't fault him. He's the only thing I did fault him about, and I was moaning about this on Twitter a little while ago, is that he released the movie at the Venice Film Festival like a couple of months ago, and so of course all the reviews were coming in saying about how epic it was, and it was like, no, mute. I don't want to know, I don't want it
You
spoiled.
can't blame him for that. That's more about the marketing department than anything.
But it is kind of just, I mean, that happened to me with the Phantom Menace. It was released, I think, 2 months before it was released in America, 2 months before over here. So everything was kind of spoiled. But I think I'd actually read the script before I saw the film. And so with this, I have muted everything and I've taken everything off. And so I just went into it as fresh as I possibly could, and then was just sat there and had this wave of awesomeness wash over me.
So we're getting close. We're actually over time here, but I do want to ask you one other question. How do you see it in comparison to the 1984? Which one is better, or what is your, if you had to compare the two, what do you see are striking differences?
I still say that for me, the main difference being is if I could have taken the Baron out of 84 and put him in this movie, to me, then this 2021 version would have been perfect. It was just, like I say, just for me, the Baron was just let down in. I understand what you're saying, that he was a bit overplayed by, I can't think of his name now, Kenneth McKillen, I think it was. But I loved that Baron because he was so just horrible and grotesque, and I really hated him. Whereas the Baron in this one, so far, I didn't like him, but I don't hate him. So for me, it would have been taking the Baron out of the first one, put it into this one, you'd have had a perfect movie.
Well, that's fair. I was kind of curious to, look, David Lynch is a great director as well. He's
Absolutely.
made a lot of amazing things, and he's a lot. He's if you've ever watched Eraserhead, it's some weird shit going on in there.
Love Eraserhead, but yeah.
And I like, one of his that I really loved is called The Straight Story.
Yep.
Have you ever seen it?
Yep, I know it. Yep.
So he's really good, and I don't know. I don't want to crap on David Lynch. I just don't think that movie, maybe that movie's problem was Suits getting in the way. You need to make another Star Wars. Dune is not Star Wars. Dune is a whole different animal, and you got to be in a different mindset for it.
He was throwing a ball and he hit it solidly, but I just don't think it just suffered from the technology of the time. And like I say, with some of the casting,
that's a part of it. Yeah, the trying to do a sci-fi epic like that because you got space. Yeah, there's not a lot of spaceships going on in the sky in this one. I don't remember. No. Maybe that's in book 2 where they show the little worm creature making the
huge the brain vagina.
The brain vagina making the thing. Yeah, I think there's. I'm trying to. I might go back and watch that just to. Okay, now I kind of get the story plot. Maybe I can figure it out from the end. What the next movie will be like.
Yeah.
But yeah. Okay. Cool. All right. So wonderful. Even though this particular stream had way too many technical difficulties. No, not you. Yeah, no, I know.
But anyway, that's just technical. That's just teething problems. Don't worry about it.
I've got a new cable on the way for my camera, so we'll get that figured out. And otherwise, you can listen to this on the podcast. It is on audio. You can find it on iTunes or Stitcher or wherever you search for podcasts. You'll find it. I am at Drunken Yoda 1 on Twitter. He is at not George Lucas 1 on Twitter. And of course, we are at Movie Outpost. This is the Last Movie Outpost, www.lastmovieoutpost.com. You can reach us at contact us at lastmovieoutpost.com. If you have any news or tidbits, or you just want to say we're doing an awesome job, we'll take anything and everything. Please like, share.
Flattery gets you everywhere.
It does. Like, share, and subscribe. We really need those subscriptions. We definitely need those likes. Helps the YouTube algorithm, and share it out. The best thing you can do to keep this going is to share it out, because we do not follow, the prescripted guidelines of YouTube necessarily. So they don't always like what we have to say. So you can help us get around that by just simply sharing it out and liking it, and, fooling the algorithm that way. Of course, do you got anything else there? Did I miss anything?
Nope.
All right.
Trying to keep the podcast up, so there should be a new podcast on a Wednesday or a Thursday. So again, look out for that as well. That's all.
Excellent. I look forward to hearing it. And as always, we will see you next Sunday. Next Sunday is Halloween. And so we actually know what we're going to do. We're going to go through our 31 days of Halloween and talk a little bit about each of them. We may even skip the news, because that's going to be a lot.
Yes.
And just do that. So unless there's anything really groundbreaking or amazing that we have to deal with, we'll just do that. So thank you very much.